Hello, and welcome to Friends, Loves, and Life from a Queer Point of View, a podcast about the stories that make us who we are. I'm David Begor. Each episode, I sit down with members and allies of our LGBTQ plus community to explore the moments that shape them, the lessons they've learned, and the ways that we can support each other, whether that's through personal growth, community connection, or practical conversations about living well. Today, I'm talking with Gregg, who shares his journey from a shy kid in Little League to building a family, community, and a partnership full of love. Gregg grew up the shy kid on his dad's baseball team, the one who would rather be anywhere else than at the bat, but who came alive in theater and the arts. Like so many of us, he carried that early original hurt from childhood. You know, that moment where a friend turned away, and it shaped him and how he trusted people for years to come. For Gregg, college was a turning point. A newspaper article gave him the words for what he already felt about himself, that he was gay. From there, his life unfolded in ways both surprising and beautiful. From building community in Tucson and Los Angeles, to raising a son, to eventually meeting his husband Stephen and creating a partnership full of rituals, laughter, and love. In our conversation, Gregg shares what it meant to grow through those layers of trust and self-worth and identity, and how, at the heart of it, he's learned to keep choosing joy, connection, and family. Here is my conversation with Gregg. Hi, Gregg.
Hey, David.
I'd like to start out with your early life and who you were as a young person. Before family, before figuring out you were gay, growing up, what kind of kid were you?
What kind of kid was I? When you ask me that question, I think about things like I was very shy. I was not very athletic. And I remember being on my father used to coach baseball or in the baseball league for kids. And I was on the team, but I never really played very much. And when I did, I didn't play very well. I remember, being pretty happy-go-lucky. And earlier on in my childhood, and then at some particular point that changed. I think that happens to most kids.
Do you think that had anything to do with knowing there was something different about you, or that's just being a kid?
I think it had something to do with the whole being gay thing, but I didn't know what that was. I don't know that I thought. I mean, it's kind of related. I think the biggest issue for me in my life was that changed me from this happy-go-lucky, free-spirited child to one that was very concerned about what people thought and so on, was a relationship I had when I was in camp when I was a kid, and I used to go to summer camp. My parents would send me to away camp in Maine, and I had an experience at that camp where I had what I thought was a really close friend, and we hung out together a lot. I placed a lot of emphasis on that, and we were, in my opinion, really great friends. And then then one particular day, I recall him referring to me not as his friend. That for some reason he didn't want to be associated with me, and it was one of those lessons you learn in life that you could be hurt, that someone can hurt you, and what that feels like. And if you think back on monumental moments in your life, I think that was one of the first. I call it the original hurt, if you will.
Yeah, it sounds like you still feel it a little bit.
It permeates through a lot of my life in terms of being afraid to let people like me, because at some particular point they may turn around and say, I never liked you to begin with. I was just, essentially playing with you. So my childhood sort of shifted from that moment where I didn't trust what people said. So we had talked about being good friends and best friends and so on. And then one day when we were with a group of people, he denied ever being my friend.
Did he ever tell you why, or did you ever find out why that happened?
No, I don't think he knew why. We were pretty young. We're not that aware. But when I recall when my trust issues as an adult, when I'm evaluating those kinds of things, I think back to that's the memory that comes back to me that kind of started that process of not being able to trust people when they say I like you or you're my friend or for any reason why someone is talking to me. Will I trust that they will, if I'm vulnerable with them, will they turn on me in some way, shape, or form?
When you were
That was a pretty important moment.
when you were you said you were on your dad's baseball team?
Mm.
And was your dad did you and your dad like get along? How did he feel about you not playing well or not really being into the sport?
I was very close to my mother, which I think is a very typical relationship between a gay boy and their mother. Is usually you're more close to your mother than you are to your father. He wasn't bad. He didn't behave badly to me when I didn't do well. I wanted to quit, but then he was unhappy with me. He didn't want me to be a quitter, but I was embarrassed to get up to the plate, and I was embarrassed to get into the field. What if I dropped the ball? And on a number of occasions I did, and I just wanted to stop.
I had a very similar situation. My mother was a Cub Scout leader. Is that what they were called? I can't remember what their exact title was.
Den mother?
Den mother. That's right. And so I was, of course, in the Cub Scouts with her, and I hated it. I hated it because I was forced to do all these things that I could not do. And like you, I was very close to my mother. So I wanted to be there because, I love my mother. But every time I was forced to do these boy-like activities, I didn't fit in. I didn't get it. It just didn't come natural to me. And I was told, you have to do this. And I think that fucks with our heads,
Yeah, I wasn't really told that I had to do it, although I had the feeling that I had to do it because my father was the manager and the coach, and I was on his team, and I didn't do it. And I think that's one of the reasons why he didn't like the idea of me quitting, because if his manager and his son quit, I can speculate on a lot of those different things. But I know, honestly, if I look back on my youth, there wasn't a lot of sports activities that I really enjoyed. I did enjoy the things I was good at, like I was good at target practice for rifles. I liked that. That was kind of fun. But for the most part, if it was a sports activity, I excelled at theater and, all the things that you would expect from a little gay wannabe boy.
How old were you when you came out?
When I came out to myself, I was in college and I was about 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
So during your teenage years, you had an idea.
Yeah, I had some idea. I didn't know what to call it. I don't know that we ever talked about it or I referenced it. I'm not even sure that I was accused of it or bullied around that. There were other things that I was bullied for, like most kids were bullied, but not around the whole gay things. When I recall that time of my life, I remember being in high school and not really understanding what this thing was that made me, attracted to men. I wasn't really attracted to anything in high school. I did date, and I did have a couple of girlfriends, and I did do a little bit of playing around in that area. The whole gay thing didn't really even occur to me in terms of title and name until...
And that's when you started coming out and experimenting and figuring out what that life is like?
Yeah, I mean, when I recall a very specific moment when I was reading the local college newspaper, and it was my freshman year, and there was an article that was in the newspaper about being gay and a local gay bar and this was in Tucson, Arizona, in the Tucson area. When I read that article, and I thought to myself, oh my God, this is me, being attracted. And it did some, back in that day, a lot of people didn't really know what gay was, or at least what gay life was about, or the feelings of a gay person. And so I read this article and it was, this is me. This is who I am. Uh, and it started to make sense.
How did that feel though when you had that revelation? Did you feel free? Did you feel like scared? What was that feeling like?
I recall feeling like it's kind of like it's kind of like a person who has symptoms of something for a long period of time, and the doctors don't know what it is, and then one day they know what it is, and you feel relieved that you have a name and a label you can put on it. But at the same time, what does this mean? What does this mean for me? Afraid of that, and then a part of me was excited about potentially going to this bar and seeing other people like that. I mean, when I was in not elementary school, when I was in high school, and even in my early youth, I did some exploration with, remember some cousins that, we did some exploring with. And in high school, I remember my best friend at the time, and I used to kind of fool around a little bit, but it was never like given a name or a negative connotation. It was just what we did. I knew it was wrong because we hid it from my parents, but I mean, the article talked about falling in love and relationships, and it was a pretty positive college town article about what it meant to be gay and where gay people go to find each other and so on. So
are you still friends?
Made sense. I'm sorry?
Are you still friends with that high school buddy?
I wouldn't say we're friends. We finally connected after many, many years on Facebook. And so we thought we follow each other. We're friends on Facebook. But we've never really gone back. And well, there was one time maybe about 10 years after that I did meet up with him, and he was still very confused about his sexuality, but we didn't really stay in touch for very long until we reconnected on Facebook. I think that he has a partner, but he's not as open about his sexuality as I am. He actually initiated it with me. It was one of those conversations. I know, there's this thing that two guys can do that a guy and a girl can do. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, oh, okay, sure.
And this was in high school?
This was in high school, yeah.
Wow. It's
funny.
My
early years in high school, like freshman.
It's funny. I can remember moments in high school that came up where, I mean, I can think about it now and I think, oh my God, if I had followed through with what was being suggested, I would have had gay experiences. But I was so scared and pushed them away. They never happened until after I graduated high school. So
some of the challenges, or not challenge, but for me, my parents tried very hard to keep me from knowing about these kinds of things, these, behaviors, whether they were gay or whatever. They tried to protect me from all of that. And I found out years later they were concerned about my sexuality, but they never told me. They told my sister, and they apparently told other people. But I think they tried very hard to keep me from it. Not just the gay thing, but also other things that they didn't think were necessarily the right thing. So they would just try to not let me explore those things.
Were your parents very religious?
No, not at all. I come from a Jewish family, Reformed Jews, and I think they were just, I honestly think they thought I was very impressionable because I was this happy-go-lucky kid that, they were always thinking of me as being very impressionable, and they didn't want me exposed to certain things. So I didn't know what that was, I didn't know what the gay thing was. I just knew that there was a portion of me that was attracted to men. I just didn't understand what that was.
Is it anything that you ever talked with your sister about?
Sister and we talk about it from time to time now. But back in the day, I had two sisters. One was 7 years younger than me, and the other one was 7 years older than me. And so we weren't very close, my older sister and I, because she was, as I was getting older, she was going through her high school, and moving away from the family kind of thing. My younger sister and I were pretty close, but older sister not. My brother, I had a brother too who was about a year and a half older than I was, and we weren't close at all. So there wasn't anyone really to talk to about it.
When you say was, are your siblings not around?
My younger sister died in a car accident when she was 17. That was a long
My
time ago.
gosh.
And then my brother died of an overdose probably about 3 years ago. But my older sister
Sorry.
is still alive, so I have one sister left. Both my parents are dead as well.
So you're in college and you're coming out, you're exploring this. Take me on the journey from that to having children. Children or child?
Child.
Child.
Yeah.
To having a son.
Yeah. Since I was coming out in college, I was starting to explore and learn. I think I did what most kids do when they're in that situation of coming out, that they tend to focus on that. Either they focus on squashing it or focusing on discovering what this new life meant. So I didn't do very well in my first attempt at college, and I dropped out after a year and a half. I moved with my best friend, who was a woman, who was also going through that similar exploration. We met at college, and shortly after, I had discovered my sexuality and seen this article. She and I were kind of linked because she did the same thing. She came to college and she saw this article too, and it was transforming for her as well. So she was originally from LA, so I moved to LA, which was very difficult because my parents were not happy I was dropping out of college. And I had saved a lot of money, and I saved some money so that I could move to LA, get an apartment and a job. And I did that fairly quickly and started to discover who I was as a young 18, 19-year-old, gay man. I moved to West Hollywood and started going out and meeting people and having experiences, and not a lot of sexual experiences. I was thinking today that first part of my life was not I had a very low self-esteem, so I didn't necessarily think of myself as being an attractive person. But when I look back on my who I was when I was younger, it's like, oh, you weren't so bad. Why did you give yourself such a hard time? But I didn't at the time.
I think we all do that. We all do that, yeah.
I can't even look at pictures of myself today. But if I look at pictures from like a year ago or 2 years ago, then I go, well, why were you giving yourself such a... I do that all the time now. It's very interesting how we do that. But I was coming from a place of, when you're not in the gay world, your self-worth is, in my opinion, can more often than not be focused on what value you bring to friends and relationships and so on. And when you move to a place like LA, things shift to value becomes more about what you look like, or at least that's how it was perceived by me and in the gay community. And I think that, we do this thing to ourselves as gay people, where we place more value on your physical appearance versus who you are as a person. And I think you'll still see that. You still see that in older gay men, where they continue to place that value on their physical appearance. But so it was a shift for me to figure out how to go from placing value on me for who I was to value on what I looked like. And it was difficult for me to do that. It was very difficult for me to do that. But I had a lot of friendships. I occasionally had some good sex, or at least I had sex. Whether it was good or not, that's another story.
But also inside your brain is this little kid who was told, I don't want to be your friend anymore, while making friendships, and all that's still playing in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah, that was always there, and it played itself out in relationships. I was reluctant to get into relationships because afraid that people might leave me. And I never necessarily, again, never necessarily put words to it. It was like a background tape. I used to think that if anyone was interested in me, there must be something wrong with them.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And that it's amazing how small moments like that, even though they don't feel small to you as a little kid, have this lasting impact on relationships that you are trying to form, but in your head, you're thinking, why do you want to be with me? You're constantly thinking that. I totally get that.
Yeah, and I didn't know that's what I was doing. So anytime somebody was interested in me, I immediately became disinterested in them. And I seemed to be more interested in the men that weren't interested in me.
Oh my God. Yes. We're like the same person. Yeah.
I think we all live that life, because so much of what we had to grow up with as kids was all about hating ourselves.
Yeah.
We were taught that being gay was wrong, and then we learned to hate that part of ourselves. And in your formative years, that stuff kind of gets imprinted on you. You learn to protect yourself from all of that, and that's how it plays forward as you get older. We're still that way.
How long since coming out to when you had your first really serious relationship?
Wow. Well, it depends what you mean by serious. I don't know that I was in a real relationship until I moved back to Arizona, 1984. So I was spent about 3 years in California, in LA, and then in San Francisco before I finally decided I need to go back to school, finish my degree. And that up until that point, I really didn't get into relationships. I had friendships, benefits, those kinds of things. I had guys that wanted to be in relationships that I would immediately say no to because, I couldn't handle that. But I moved back to Arizona. I lived in San Francisco for about a year, and then moved back to Arizona to go back to school. And I started hanging out with a men's discussion group, which was very big in those days. Men would get together, sit around a circle and talk about issues, things that, what's going on in their lives, and seek out advice and support from each other. These are gay men's groups. I honestly miss those things. I think they were so beneficial, especially to young men who were coming out, to be around some older gay men who were there to help them. But I met a man in that group, and that was my first relationship. So I was 21, my first relationship with a man.
Fairly young for a first serious relationship.
Yeah, I've only been in 2 serious relationships in my lifetime. The first one was with the one I was just discussing, and then the one I'm in now.
Yeah, so you're in this relationship with this guy, going great, 16 years, and then... at what point during that time did you have a child?
So we were together probably about a number of years, maybe 4 or 5. I can't recall. I suppose if I put it down on paper, I could tell you exactly what it was. But we were pretty active in the gay community in Tucson. We both finished college together in Tucson. He was going as well as I, and we both finished together. And I started a gay and lesbian theater company in Tucson, Arizona. And
wow.
Yeah, we had a couple, a lesbian couple that was part of the theater company, and they wanted to have a child. At the time, they just wanted to have a sperm donor. And, my partner at the time came to me and said, "Well, you want to have a child? Why don't we do this?" And I was like, "Well, first of all, I'm nowhere near ready to do this. And secondly, I don't want to be a sperm donor. I want to be a father." So, well, why don't we talk to them? So we sat down and we talked to them, and they were amenable to having a shared relationship. I think optimally they would have preferred to have a sperm donor, but they realized that that necessarily wasn't going to happen. And then we decided to have a child. Yeah. So that I could time that to say that was, so Connor is 34 years old. So that was 34 years ago.
And did that relationship with them work out? I mean, did it stay a mutually beneficial relationship?
It's amazing the kinds of things you do when you're young and you tolerate. Did it work out? Yeah, it was good. We trusted each other, so we didn't get into any kind of legal agreements. That's the kind of thing you say to yourself, oh, you should have done something. But honestly, in the end, it didn't really matter. We didn't have any challenges in that area in terms of custody or whatnot. We just worked things out. They were not necessarily, they led different lives than I wanted to lead. But we found a way to make it work. We're still in touch, but we don't, talk on a regular basis.
Right. For Connor, was it you were dad? Were you dad?
Yeah. So Connor originally was supposed to be me as the biological father, and after a few months of trying, we decided, well, let's mix this up literally and see if it betters our chances of becoming parents. And so my sperm was mixed with my partner's sperm at the time, and then put into the woman who wanted to be the mother. It turns out his sperm made it and mine didn't. So the reason I bring that up is I was known as daddy or dad, even though I was not the biological father. We didn't know for probably 6 months to a year after the baby was born, after Connor was born. And he's known as Papa. And on the women's side, one was named Mom and the other one was named Anne. That was her name. So she didn't want to be anything more than just Anne.
That's actually similar to us. Derek has always been Derek to Leo. He's never been dad or whatever, anything. I've always been dad.
Yeah. So I've always been daddy.
And how is Connor now are you still close with your son?
Yeah. I think Stephen and I are probably closest to our son than either our ex or my ex and his mother. But he works in Oakland. He lives in Oakland, and we live in Palm Springs. And I'm up in that area once a week for work. And like every month we go out for dinner, or we chat and we text and we talk to each other on the phone quite a bit. And he comes out of it.
That's nice. That's awesome. And so during this time, you end up in San Francisco, and between getting to San Francisco and meeting Stephen, how did that all come about?
So there's a lot of things that went on in the time period between when I met my ex to meeting Stephen and moving to San Francisco. I'll just bring this back because I think one of the challenges that every gay man faces in their life, or a lot of gay men face, is whether they're going to be in a monogamous relationship or a non-monogamous relationship. And I was very much into having a monogamous relationship, and at the beginning of our relationship, so was he. We didn't discuss it a lot, but we kind of made that deal with each other that we would be in a monogamous relationship. And then a lot of life changes, a lot of things happened. The baby was born, and so on. And my ex started to want to experience things in the S&M community, and I was probably willing to go with him on that in terms of doing things together. But we had been together probably about 12 years at the time, and it became an issue between us, and it became a really large issue. And as you can imagine, it brought up a lot of trust issues for me. Here I am, I've allowed myself to be in a relationship with somebody who says they love me, and I believe they love me, and they did love me. And now he wants to have a non-monogamous relationship, and he wants to experience things in the SM community. And so we went through a lot of work on that. I finally came to the conclusion that I could either end the relationship and be away from each other because I wanted to be monogamous, or I could see what it's like to be non-monogamous, and if it wasn't working for me, I could still end the relationship. But if I didn't at least give it a try, maybe it wouldn't. I would regret it. So I did a lot of therapy. I did a lot of changing my physicalness. I've always had, as a kid, I always had a weight problem. So I would either be overweight or I would lose a lot of weight, and then I'd go back and forth between pudgy and skinny and pudgy and skinny and so on. And in the 12 years that we've been together, I've done that a couple of times, and I wasn't really feeling very positive about my self-image. And so a lot of the fear of non-monogamy would be that he'd go off, and he was a very attractive man. He'd go off and he would be with other men and have a great time, and I wouldn't, because nobody would want me.
Yes, the tapes in our brain.
So all that stuff started coming back, and if you remember, the whole conversation around changing from being valued for who you are versus valued for what you look like, a lot of that sort of slid back in on that. And I made that decision to lose some weight, start working out, make myself more attractive so that I could be valued for what I looked like, not just valued for who I was. And I kind of slipped into that next step of my life, which was around that. And I was very successful at that for many, many, many years. I continued to work out, and I continued to muscle, and I turned everything around. And I sort of fell into this life of being valued for who you look like, for what you look like, and not necessarily valued for what you can contribute or who you are.
Can you remember or still feel what that difference was like?
Well, it's never as clean and clear as oh my God, people like me because I'm pretty, and that's a great thing, because I think we're always striving for people to like us for who we are. That's sort of base code in our who we are as humans. We want people to like us for who we are. But if we add this layer on top, which I think a lot of gay people do, this hyper masculinity, this, I want to be pretty, it pulls away from the fact that maybe somebody won't like you for who you are, but they'll like you for being pretty. And liking or disliking you for not being pretty or not pretty is not as painful as if they dislike you for who you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So I launched into this world of wanting to be liked for being pretty and being able to have sex with a lot of men. And I kind of went into that lifestyle with him after 12 years of us being.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. There's a thing about how it builds up over time, and suddenly you realize that you're only in the world of wanting and being wanted for the visual aesthetic, and less about, for me, I ended up with a lot of friends or sexual partners where there was nothing other than visual appearance. And that ultimately in the end for me, that wasn't enough.
Yeah, I totally agree. I started to enter that world, and as time went, in the very beginning, it was cool and exciting.
Yeah.
And you're always looking for somebody really pretty to hang out with. You sort of adopt that whole thing.
Yeah.
But eventually you start to discover that that's not enough. You want to have meaningful conversations. You want people to like you for who you are. It's not all about sex. In the gay community, sex, the desire for sex, the desire for conquest, all of that is that hyper-masculinity piece is very prevalent.
Yes.
We can't have very many conversations without using sexual innuendo, and
right.
We touch each other, whether good or bad, whatever it is part of what we are as gay people.
Yeah. And then there's the thing that happens when you start backing out of it, that you start feeling like, my gosh, I'm not smart enough to have conversations. I'm not savvy enough to talk about politics or current events. And because I've spent most of my time focusing on being around and with and hunting for beautiful people. And that's what it was all about.
Yeah.
And, for me, there were a lot of, going out and partying and drugs and all that stuff.
Drugs make that more, they give you the confidence to continue to do that, right?
Yeah.
It takes away your ability to have a conversation.
You don't need to
things.
have a conversation.
You don't need, yeah. Just,
yeah.
And we moved into that, and not as a regular thing, but weekends we spent a lot of time doing drugs.
Sure.
Going to parties and going to sex clubs, and, doing all that stuff. It became a way of life. Yeah, I forget what you asked me. So we moved to San Francisco.
And that's how you met Stephen, right?
Yeah. So about 2 years after we moved. Well, not 2 years after we moved. So after we moved to San Francisco, there were a couple of failed attempts at a triad relationship. I knew that was something that my ex wanted to do. So in order for me to feel comfortable with it, I would be the one to potentially initiate those things with somebody that I thought would be acceptable. And we attempted it one time, and that didn't work out at all. And I didn't want to do it again, except then we met Stephen, and I fell in love with Stephen.
And that did work out.
As a triad, no, it did not. I mean, it worked out that we spent a couple of years together, but in the long term, it didn't it worked out for me, but it didn't work out for him.
What was that like, though? So you're in this relationship with this guy for the long term, your ex, and then Stephen comes in. How do you transition from 2 to 3 back to 2, but you're with Stephen and you at this point?
Well, to go to into a triad relationship, I always tell people, you really have to be comfortable with who you are and your relationship with your partner. A lot of times people get into these kinds of relationships because they feel like they're missing something, and they bring a third person to the relationship to make up for that. Maybe somebody has moved on to a different place and not as together as they were, and someone's looking for that closeness, and they're not getting it anymore. There are triad relationships that work incredibly well. So I'm not going to tell you that triads don't work. They do, and I have friends that have been in triads for years. I don't know that I would say they work or they don't work. They're enjoyable at the time, and if they last or don't last, it doesn't really matter, right? It is what it is. If they last the rest of your lives together, that's great. If they last for 20 years or they last for 5 years, enjoy the experience as you're going through it.
Sure. Yeah.
But we were together for a couple of years, and I think I discovered through my relationship with Stephen that there were things that were missing in my relationship with my ex, and we went to therapy together to try to help us sort of come to an equilibrium on this, and it just didn't work out. And I realized through that I had lowered my expectations of what I wanted in a relationship, and it was okay to have those expectations. When I was younger, I thought there was something wrong with me. I was taught that you shouldn't have expectations. You should try to put those things aside. And I did. And I think that's why it lasted for as many years as it did. But when I started to have the things that I could have with Stephen that I couldn't have with my ex, I started to get angry that I had spent 12 years lowering my expectations what a relationship could look like. Angry first at him, and then angry at me for lowering my expectations. But eventually I figured out that it was time to move on. This was the relationship I had with Stephen was the one that I always wanted.
Are you and Stephen monogamous? I may have asked Stephen that. I can't remember.
Well,
no, you're not.
We are monogamous. We don't go off and have dates with other people individually, but we do parties together, and he and I do our own thing. touch base at the party quite a bit and make sure the other one is doing okay. We look out for each other, make sure we're having fun. If one of us is not having fun, we don't stay. We
You take care of each other.
take care of
And
each other.
ultimately, that's the goal, right? That's what you want, is a partner that they'll take care of you, you'll take care of them, and you're each number one.
Yep.
Before anything or anyone else.
That's it. And if he sees I'm not having a good time, or if he sees that someone is not treating me well, he will come to my rescue, and I will do the same. I'm always
That's
looking
very
out to make
sweet.
sure he's safe. Yeah, that's that interdependence, that relationship, that family unit. That we may go our separate ways, but we're still connected. And that plays out
That's
in
beautiful.
lots of different aspects of a relationship. Yeah,
That's beautiful. Wow.
We have a
So
great
if you
relationship.
could, yeah, it seems like you guys have a great relationship. Every time I'm around you, there seems to be a lot of respect there.
Yeah,
And you guys do a lot of things together, which you travel a lot and
we
stuff.
do everything together. We do. I mean, I actually, fly up north to work, and I don't enjoy traveling away from him. There are some benefits in that. I get a night where I don't have to think about anybody but myself. He gets a night where he doesn't have to think about anybody but himself. But it's not the preferred way for us to be. We generally go with each other everywhere.
It's the same with Derek and I. I mean, for, I don't know, probably 10 or 11 years, our desks are like side by side. We were around each other 24/7. I love being around Derek all the time. I love it.
Yeah,
I'd love it if he was working back here at home, but he's not. And
yeah, I'm totally like that's how I am. And he's the same way. If he's got to go to the hardware store or something, he'll look at me and say, "Do you want to come?"
I'd be like,
For the most
yeah,
part, I'll go.
yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah, I'll go.
Just keep him company.
That's totally what it is. Because I know sometimes I'll go with Derek to the grocery store. We never say a word to each other. We're just wandering through the grocery store. He's picking out stuff, and I'm just pushing the cart. That's good enough for me.
The greatest part about relationships is you can both be laying on opposite sides of the couch watching TV and really not feel like the need to say anything to each other, but everything is okay.
Yeah.
So we check in. What do you want to watch next? Or that kind of thing. And that's a comfortable feeling.
Derek and I do this thing when we go to bed, because we always go to bed at the same time most nights. And we always hold hands when we go to bed. Always.
And what we do every night before one of us turns off the light is we kiss each other 5 times. Not 6, not 4. If we do it 4 times, it's like, what? I don't get 5? So it's this very cute little ritual that we have every night before we go to bed, and then every weekend morning when we can, and every morning we get up a little bit earlier. Like in the weekdays, it's like a half hour. We set the alarm for a half hour before we need to get up so we can cuddle for a half hour. So it's a little cuddle alarm goes off, and then
that is adorable.
Yeah,
wow.
It's pretty cute. 25 years.
But it's those little things like that I think keep it going. That if you commit to those little things and they become, oh God, what's the word I'm looking for? Rituals. That's what you do. Yeah. And I don't know. When I think about how I was as a young person looking at things like that, I'd be like, oh, that's weird. That's like, I don't get it. And now I love it. I don't want to be without it.
Yeah, it's kind of like we are going through this world together. Each of us has our own path, and our path is intertwined with each other. And we do this sort of intertwining. You go away from each other, and you come back, and you go away, and you come back. But at the end of the day, it's sort of a recognition that you are both on the path together.
Yeah,
and that
totally.
That ritual kind of brings us together in that path, in a way.
Totally. Yeah. I totally get that. When you look back now to the Gregg who was just coming out, what do you think that Gregg would think of you now?
I think he would like probably be very happy. This is where I wanted to be. I wanted to have a comfortable life. I wanted to accomplish things in my life. I wanted to explore. I wanted to grow. I wanted to change. I wanted to experience things. And I wanted to be in a relationship that was um, close and meaningful. And I think he would be, I think he'd be very happy. He would be comforted to know that no matter where I go, I'm going to end up in a good place.
What would you say to him if you could talk to him?
Have fun. Enjoy your life. You're not here for anyone else but yourself, whether that's taking care of people, helping people, having great sex, meeting lots of people, falling in love as many times as you want to, trying new things. Just have a good time. Just go and enjoy life and experience. That's what we're here for. At least that's what I believe. We're here for very, selfish reasons. We're here to experience and enjoy life and feel the feelings and do the things that we want to do. Those are the things that I think we're here to do. And if we don't do those things, then what's the point?
Yeah, I like that. I told you this would only be an hour, and we've kind of reached that hour mark, but I have a couple more questions for you. As a gay person, and this is sort of speaking to young gay people today, what is the biggest challenge that you faced being gay, and how did you overcome that?
I think one of the biggest challenges that people face, just in general, not necessarily have to do with being gay, is how do we overcome the things that we have, the things that we've done to protect ourselves from hurt and pain, and how do we overcome those things so that we can be more free? Because I think those things serve us well when we're young. And as humans, that's part of what it is to be human, is to avoid danger by learning how to work around those kinds of things. So we build this hundreds and hundreds of defensive measures in order to keep from, how do you keep your finger from going into a light socket, right? I mean, you learn not to do that, but it's with emotions, it's more nuanced. And so I think learning to undo all of that, to become more free. And as a gay man, as a gay person, there's a deeper level of that. I think it's similar to any minority who has been marginalized and attacked. You learn defensive measures that will keep you from getting hurt.
Yeah.
And I think for gay people, we've learned behaviors that I think are difficult to overcome. Like we talked about toxic masculinity, and we talked about that whole idea of putting value in physicalness versus who you are. How do you undo that learning, or at least observe it and put it aside when you can, because it always comes up, right? How do you find happiness in those things? And I've been trying to do that.
We do a lot of that, or we keep a lot of that for survival. But
It's
if we
human
could
nature.
let a lot of it, but if we could let a lot of it go, we'd have a lot more freedom in our existence. Yeah, I totally get that. All right, my very last question for you is, if you could have a no strings attached fling with any fictional character, who would it be?
It's interesting because when I was listening to your interview with Gregg, you asked him about a gay icon. And so I was thinking, who would the gay icon be? So I didn't think about a fictional character.
We can talk about gay icons if you want, if you prefer that.
No, I didn't think about. I couldn't figure out a gay icon either. There are certain characters. I forget the name of the woman that put out this whole SM series, Beauty's Revenge, and the beauty books. I forget her name, but they were about fictional characters.
Anne Rice?
Anne Rice, thank you. So that whole beauty series, I love that beauty series because it really kind of put the sort of dominance and submission and
Yeah.
into a natural situation or natural world, if you will, of how people live their lives. And I thought I've always loved the idea of submission. And there are some characters in that, especially there were some gay characters in that series as well. There's some definite relief and release in giving completely to somebody else.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and she was very good at being descriptive in a way that you could put yourself in those roles, even with the vampire books, right? There was you could just put yourself in there and just be a part of the story. It was just so relatable. Is that the right word? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Greg, I really appreciate you. It went so fast. I appreciate you sitting down with me.
We'll have to do this, without the microphone sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Get together and talk.
Yeah, I love it. I'd love it. All right. Thank you very much for
Very
this.
welcome.
And I will talk to you soon. That's a wrap. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave a review. To keep the conversation going, you can find me on Blue Sky, YouTube, and Substack at David Bigor. I'm David Bigor. Until next time, be bold, be free, be you. This has been A Queer Point of View. Friends, Loves, and Life.